Hello and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Stefan, I'm the initiator of EcoHubs, and today I want to introduce you to RCOS. RCOS stands for Regenerative Community Operating System, and it is one concrete outcome of the work we're doing at EcoHubs. EcoHubs is about making community living more viable, more resilient, and easier to start and sustain. This work comes from observing and researching where communities struggle, especially around governance, power, and long-term stability. Let's get started. EcoHubs is an open and evolving initiative, not a company. It's not a movement with a fixed belief. We focus on supporting real-world communities by working on structure and not ideology. My role here is as a builder, a researcher, and facilitator. I work with communities, not in any way above them. I don't tell people how to live. The goal is to help communities define their own agreements clearly so they can actually live by them. Let's look at the vision of EcoHubs. So the long-term vision is that communities don't have to reinvent everything from scratch. We imagine shared standards that make communities understandable to each other. We would like to create and offer an open knowledge base where lessons, failures, and solutions are documented. A a modular system that can evolve without breaking what already works, and also tools that support communities in their decisions without controlling them in any way. Let's look into the challenges that communities face. Many people want to live in communities, but communities often fail for the same reasons. They often have shared or good shared values, but often struggle with unclear decisions, hidden power, burnout of members, avoidance of conflict, and informal rules that nobody formally agreed on. RCOS exists because good intentions alone are unfortunately not enough. I believe we need shared structures that actually work, especially under pressure. Okay, what is RCOS? RCOS stands for Regenerative Community Operating System. It is a structured framework for how a community defines itself, makes decisions, handles conflicts, and also evolves over time. Important to notice that RCOS does not tell you what to believe. It tells you what you must define explicitly if you want your community to last. It has a core and optional modules. It does not impose any ideologies, which allows it also to be adapted to different types of communities. It also focuses on making implicit assumptions explicit. So now we learned what RCOS is. Let's see what it is not. It is not a software program, even though we use the term operating system. It is not an ideology, a belief system, or any sort of lifestyle guide. It is also not a DAO or DAO, which some might have heard from blockchain topics. It stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. We are not, RCOS is not that, even though we might use some DAO-like operations internally in EcoHubs. We're also not a religion. RCOS is not a religion. We're also not a shared experiment. RCOS is not not a social experiment. It is not a top-down authority, and also does not promise any harmony or how to fix human behavior kind of thing. It only works if the community actually follows also what it defines. RCOS tells not what you have to believe, only what you need to decide. So I get sometimes the question of why regenerative in RCOS, so the R in RCOS. RCOS is regenerative because it is designed to prevent a silent decay, so to say. Silent decay would be in this way the opposite of regeneration. So we designed it to prevent it. Power, responsibility, and norms must be visible, reviewable, and adjustable. Instead of collapsing or drifting, communities can correct themselves with RCOS. So regeneration here means social and structural resilience, not just ecology. It can also be understood as a system that can repair itself and improve itself by design. Let's look at the core of RCOS. As we said, it consists out of the core and modules. So what is the core? It defines what every community must clarify, no matter how small, large, or which ideology it follows. It does not define answers. It defines questions that cannot be left implicit. These are organized into clear stacked layers, so nothing important is skipped. Some examples include what the community actually governs, who is a member and who isn't, how decisions are made, how conflict is handled, and how, for example, rules change over time. Okay, now that we know what RCOS core is and also what it is not, we can take a look at it. This is the website on which the RCOS, also informally called Blueprint, is hosted. You can see here on the left, I selected the current draft version and selected layer 0. This is the page that defines which definitions you need to make to become more explicit about the invisible structure that glues you together as a community. If we would scroll down on this page, we would find further definitions as well as invariants and artifacts. Artifacts define how you can make these necessary definitions. But yeah, more about artifacts in a little bit. Let's look at the RCOS core layers. They consist of 7 layers numbered from 0 to 6. So what are these layers good for? As I found out in my research, communities fail when there's a mix of responsibilities, power, and values instead of a clear separation. It enables you to make decisions on the right level. It provides also an organizational language. If a conflict arises, the lowest relevant layer wins by design. So lowest in number. Also, lower levels constrain the higher levels. You can say it is one directional, so it doesn't go the other way around. And higher levels never constrain or override the lower ones. So let's look at the different layers more in detail. Layer 0 is the identity and scope layer. It defines the purpose and the non-negotiables of your community. Layer 1 is the membership layer. It defines who belongs and how. Layer 2 defines how decisions are made and enforced. So it's the governance and decision logic layer. Layer 3 defines the value, contribution, and resources of your community. This is the economic and resources layer. Layer 4 I called conflict repair and accountability layer, and this layer defines conflict handling mostly. Layer 5 defines daily operations, which is the operations and coordination layer. And the last one, layer 6, defines how the system itself evolves. Each layer exists because ignoring it would cause predictable failure. Let's look again at an example of the hosted blueprint website. These pages define and explain the structure of each layer. You can see here on the left, I selected RCOS layers and selected layer 1. So if you want to know more about a specific layer, so in this case layer 1, you would go to one of these pages and you can find more information instead of going deep into the RCOS layer itself. You also see links to RCOS modules, stress tests, and templates for artifacts, but later more about these topics. So how RCOS empowers communities? RCOS is for new communities that want to start intentionally. And also it is for existing communities that already feel friction or stagnation, or simply want to improve their structures. You don't need to agree on outside values to use RCOS. You only need to need the willingness to make your values explicit. RCOS helps new communities to start with clarity, avoid traps most communities end up in, and also to choose intentionally about all areas of community living. Existing communities can profit as well as RCOS makes assumptions visible. It reduces conflicts. It helps stabilize weak or unclear structures while keeping what already feels alive and meaningful. For example, your vision, your ideology, or your values. They're not touched. Let's look at a practical example of how a community can benefit of the RCOS. Imagine a small eco community of 8 to 15 people, and they start by adopting the RCOS core. They sit together, define their scope. So, for example, shared land and shared foods, private income, and so on. They choose modules like the permaculture module and the land commons add-on. Instead of relying on their vibes or assumptions, they sit together and they define all their norms explicitly, guided by RCOS. And then they operate, they review what works and adapt without destabilizing the entire system. So, okay, we mentioned modules a few times now. What is a module? Modules are optional extensions on top of the RCOS core. Modules cannot override the core, but can enhance specific areas outside the core. You can see it basically as a additional or optional layer below the core. This allows diversity and adaptation without any sort of fragmentation. Some examples for modules are permaculture, governance models, alternative education, energy, or economic systems. Also here, the module defines what you need to define. It does not provide you with any ideology or any imposed values. Also, the term artifacts you've heard about a few times now. So what are they? RCOS uses artifacts to make decisions the community makes visible and also durable. They are the, so to say, tangible outputs of RCOS decisions. For example, membership agreements, purpose or land stewardship charters, decision rules, conflict processes, and also governance protocols, role definitions, and economic rules. Excuse me. Every layer of the core and every module has their specific artifacts. So it solves the issue. If it's not written, it's not enforceable. Or if you want to turn it around, if it's written, you can enforce it. So artifacts turn your intentions into a shared reference point. Yeah. They also reduce the ambiguity of decisions. They survive even if your leaders change, and make your commitments inside the community into something real and tangible. So also conflicts inside of the community are less personal when the finger pointing turns your fingers on artifacts instead of people. Okay, I also mentioned stress tests before. Let's look into those. RCOS is validated through stress tests, not only through the ideals. So a stress test asks what happens when a certain thing goes wrong. So for example, you have dominant speakers in your meetings. You have invisible power accumulation. Some members burn out. There's leadership failure or ideological disagreement. Each test checks whether the RCOS structure detects and handles the issue. If it cannot, that means the structure is incomplete and should be repaired or completed. Stress tests are formally and structurally written, so they can be reviewed and also extended over time. An example for a stress test is, for example, let's say a member violates a shared norm. With RCOS, the community does not improvise emotionally. It already knows where the rule applies, who the allowed person is to decide, or who the allowed people are to decide, how escalation works, and what exit paths exist. So the result is usually less drama, more fairness, and faster resolution. Not because people are perfect, but because the structure is clear. Why do we think that RCOS is effective? RCOS works because it separates structure from ideology. It turns values into explicit, testable choices instead of assumptions. It reduces informal and hidden power, and it supports evolution over time instead of freezing communities into a rigid system. Okay, let's look into the future of RCOS and EcoHubs projects. So what would we like to do in the future? We would like to improve and extend the RCOS core and also its modules. We would like to add artifacts and more stress tests. We would like to create community templates, which are predefined and reusable starting configurations, so to say, starter kits for communities, which contain configurations of pre-filled RCOS core and modules and artifacts. So it's easier for new communities and also for existing ones. And we also would like to create reference normative profiles, which are versioned, machine-readable profiles. They contain explicit value and rule sets, so norms, constraints, and obligations as well. They're basically comparable to a constitution and an ideology. Also, we would like to create a web app for managing RCOS in a website and also its modules. So it will make it easier to define your own structure. And besides all of this, we would also like to pilot some communities. So use RCOS in real life communities. By the way, we're also looking for new members. EcoHubs is open to contributors, so everyone who would like to contribute can apply. This includes community builders, facilitators, developers, designers, researchers. We need all types of people who are interested in joining this mission. And We would also like to pilot our projects on communities. So if you're interested in partnering and being a pilot community, please let us know. Okay, we're reaching the end of this presentation. I hope I could give you a first glimpse into a system that can help communities to be more resilient and accessible. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, contact us on our website, or text us in our public Discord chat. Thank you for your time, and see you next time.